Hi, we're going to get right along into the next phase here, which would be talking a little bit about the different component strands of the visual arts, also getting into a bit of creative revision and how you can teach your students about the revision process through using Play-Doh. Thanks again. Hope you enjoy. Hi there, how's it going? And welcome back. What I want to get into talking a little bit about right now is a PEG system. PEG systems are often used to memorize information. For today, I'm going to be using a PEG system to teach you about the component strands of the visual art. So this is thinking a little bit more about arts from the standards point of view, which we haven't really done much of yet. So to get started, I want to show you a real quick PEG system. The PEG system consists of 5 pegs, because there are 5 component strands. So here goes, the very first peg, and you want to do this with me. 1 is tree. One more time. 1 is tree. 2 is switch. 2 is switch. 3 is, like 3 fingers, stool. The 3 fingers become the 3 legs of the stool. 3 is stool. 4 is car, because a car has 4 wheels and I've got the steering wheel in my hands. 4 is car, because it's got 4 wheels and I've got the steering wheel in my hands. 5 is glove, because I have 5 fingers and the glove goes on my hand. So here goes one more time. I'll run through it a little quicker. 1 is tree, 2 is switch, 3 is stool, 4 is car, 5 is glove. You want to run with them through me, please. 1 is tree, 2 is switch, 3 is stool, 4 is car, 5 is glove. Okay, so now you've got the PEG system down, you've got it memorized. The important thing to do there is show the number, 1 is, and then show the gesture for the peg. The peg is basically the tree here, or the peg is essentially the switch, or the peg is the stool, or the peg is the car, or the peg is the glove. We're using that, and in a little bit we're going to be creating a connection here so that we memorize these component strands. PEG systems have been used quite a bit, especially when you're trying to get your students to memorize large amounts of data or information in a short amount of time. So here goes. I'm actually going to start creating the links for you. 1 is tree for artistic perception. 1 is tree for artistic perception because this is the academic language that we use. It's what words are you using to describe something. Say we were using 1 is tree for artistic perception, we would be thinking now of what are the words I can use to describe the tree, like maybe this is the tree trunk, or these are the stems, or these are the branches, or these are the leaves, these are the cells within the... It's basically using academic language. Now say we want to think of artistic perception within the comic, now we would begin to think of what is the academic language that we're using with comics. Is it panels? Is it onomatopoeia? Is it word art? Is it characters? Is it a character development, or a protagonist, or an antagonist, or a resource? That gets into artistic perception, excuse me. The next thing is, so 1 is tree for artistic perception because it's the academic language that's used. 2 is switch for creative expression. The reason why? 2 is switch for creative expression because we're switching on the lights. This way we can see what we've actually created. Or you could think of it as 2 is switch for creative expression because I'm turning on the switch to my creativity. Creative expression is basically what are you creating. In this case, your students are creating comics. What are they creating them with? Paper, colored pencils. It's basically how are your students expressing themselves. If you are in dance, your creative expression might be a form of dance. If you are in music, your creative expression might be creating a song or composing a song and then playing it. Creative expression, how are you creatively expressing yourself or your ideas? It might be through a painting, it might be through a drawing. In this case, for your students, it's creating drawings and storytelling that goes along with it. So 1 is tree for artistic perception. This is a vocabulary and academic language that we use. 2 is switch for creative expression because we're turning on the lights, we're turning on the ignition to our creativity. The next one, 3 is stool for historical and cultural context. The stool serves as the base for historical and cultural context. It's the basis of art. How are we essentially integrating cultural connections with the artwork? Maybe your comics are going to be about a specific time period, say for example the 4th of July, or say in other areas Cinco de Mayo, or maybe you're celebrating something at a certain time and you want your comics to reflect that cultural content. Moving right along here, 4 is car for aesthetic valuing. Mixing these up here. 4 is car for aesthetic valuing. The reason why guys are notorious for this, when they see a car, they start looking at it, oh man, that car's really nice, yeah, I like that car. Especially with those classic cars. When they're doing that, they're essentially valuing it, they're evaluating. Aesthetic valuing is all about evaluating. If you're going to go through an art critique, this would be it. So it's the critique. I like this, maybe this could improve a little bit. It's effective feedback. That is aesthetic valuing. And finally, the last one, 5 is glove for connection. So 5 is glove for connections. The reason why, this is all about how can we create connections between using the comic with what we're doing and relating it to, say, history, or how can we connect comics to science, or how can we connect comics to math. So one more time, just a quick run through. 1 is tree for artistic perception. This is the academic language that's used to describe the tree. 2 is switch for creative expression, because we're turning on the switch to our creativity. 3 is stool for historical and cultural content. This is how are we relating it to, say, something like Cinco de Mayo, or how are we relating it to the 4th of July? How does it relate to history as it's progressed, or the history of art as it's progressed? 4 is car for aesthetic valuing, because you're looking at it and you're admiring it. You're saying, hey, this comic that you've created is phenomenal. I really love the work that you're doing. 5 is glove, because it relates to the connections. How are you connecting the comic now to other areas within the curriculum? How are you relating comics to, say, math? How are you relating it to science? And that's essentially the PEG system. 1 is tree, 2 is switch, 3 is stool, 4 is car, 5 is glove. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the PEG system. Just a quick way to remember ideas. Thanks. Hi there, we're going to take a short break right now. We've gone through a few different topics and ideas. Thank you very much for hanging in there with us.